July 9th, 1958, 11:15 at night. The sun has just set over the Gulf of Alaska. The sky is still glowing orange on the horizon. In Lituya Bay, a narrow fjord on the southeast coast of Alaska, 3 fishing boats are anchored for the night. The water is calm, the air is cold but quiet. The men on these boats are getting ready to sleep. They don't know that in less than 2 minutes, the largest wave in recorded history will try to kill them. Not a 10-foot wave, not a 30-foot wave, not even a 100-foot wave. A wave 1,720 feet high. That is taller than the Empire State Building, taller than the Eiffel Tower, taller than any skyscraper in America, and it shouldn't exist. Scientists will spend decades trying to understand what happened at Lituya Bay. Engineers will say it's impossible. Physicists will struggle to explain the numbers. But it did exist, and tonight you're going to see what it looked like. This is the story of the Lituya Bay Megatsunami, the wave that shouldn't exist, and the only boat that survived. Let me show you what Lituya Bay looks like, because the geography is the most important part of this story. Lituya Bay is on the southeast coast of Alaska, about 120 miles west of Juneau. It is a T-shaped fjord. A narrow entrance from the Gulf of Alaska opens into a wide basin. Then the bay turns left and right into 2 long arms, like the top of a T. The bay is surrounded by mountains, steep mountains, cliffs that rise almost vertically from the water. In some places, the walls go up 4,000 feet without touching the ground. This is one of the most beautiful places on Earth. It is also one of the most dangerous, because Lituya Bay sits on the Fairweather Fault. That is where the Pacific tectonic plate meets the North American plate. They grind against each other constantly, building pressure, storing energy. On July 9th, 1958, that energy was about to be released. But let me go back, because the story of Lituya Bay is not just about the wave. It is about the people who were there, and one of them would live to tell the story. His name was Howard Ulrich. He was 46 years old, a fisherman, a father. He lived in Washington State but came to Alaska every summer to fish for salmon. On the night of July 9th, Ulrich was anchored in Lituya Bay with his 7-year-old son Sonny. They were on their boat, the Idri. It was a 24-foot fishing boat, small, wooden, nothing special. 2 other boats were anchored nearby, the Badger with 3 men on board, and the Sunmore with a husband and wife. All 3 boats were in the same part of the bay. All 3 boats were about to face something no human had ever seen before. July 9th, 1958, 11:15 at night. Howard Ulrich is in the cabin of the Idri. His son is asleep in a small bunk. The water is calm. The bay is quiet. 11:16. The ground begins to shake. Ulrich later said it felt like someone had picked up the entire bay and started shaking it like a rug. The shaking was violent, vertical. The boat jumped. The water churned. The earthquake lasted less than 2 minutes, but in that time the entire landscape changed. The Fairweather Fault ripped open. The ground on one side of the fault lurched upward, as much as 20 feet in some places. Trees fell. Cliffs collapsed. The mountains themselves seemed to move. Geologists later measured the earthquake at magnitude 7.8. But that number doesn't mean much. What matters is what happened next. Underneath Lituya Bay, the earthquake triggered something unexpected. A massive landslide. Not from the sides of the bay, from the head of the bay, the far end of the North Arm. A glacier there, called Lituya Glacier, sits in a valley between 2 mountains. The earthquake shook that valley so violently that an entire mountainside let go. An estimated 90 million tons of rock. A block of granite almost 3,000 feet long, 3,000 feet wide, and 300 feet thick. That is roughly the size of a large sports stadium, but made of solid rock. This massive block of rock fell from a height of almost 2,000 feet. It hit the water at the head of the bay at over 100 miles per hour. 90 million tons of rock. 2,000-foot drop. 100 miles per hour impact. What happened next is almost impossible to describe. The impact of the landslide generated a wave, but not a normal wave. A normal tsunami is caused by an earthquake pushing water from below. The water rises slowly. It spreads out across the ocean. This wave was different. This wave was caused by a mountain falling into the sea. The water didn't rise slowly. It exploded. The initial splash rose over 1,700 feet above the water. That is higher than any skyscraper in America. It scraped rock and ice off the mountainside as it went up. Then gravity took over. The water fell back down, and when it hit the surface of the bay, it created a second wave. The wave that would travel down Lituya Bay. This second wave started at the head of the North Arm. It was over 100 feet high at the start, and it was moving fast, roughly 150 miles per hour. The wave traveled down the north arm of the bay. It stripped trees off the mountainside up to 520 feet above sea level. That means the wave was over 500 feet high when it passed through the north arm. Then the wave entered the main basin of the bay. It started to slow down, but it also started to rise again because the basin funneled the water into a narrower space. When the wave reached the entrance of the bay, it was still over 100 feet high, and right at the entrance, 3 fishing boats were anchored. Let me tell you what those men saw. On the Badger, 3 fishermen were asleep when the earthquake hit. They felt the shaking. They went on deck to see what was happening. The water was wild, churning, rising and falling. Then they saw the wave coming. One of the men later said it looked like the entire bay was rising up to meet the sky. A wall of water, black against the orange sky, stretching from one side of the bay to the other. The Badger was anchored in the middle of the entrance. There was nowhere to go. The wave hit the Badger and flipped it like a toy. The boat capsized. One man was thrown into the water. Another was trapped inside. The third was never seen again. The Sunmore was anchored closer to the shore. The husband and wife on board saw the wave coming. They tried to start their engine. It didn't matter. The wave picked up the Sunmore and threw it against the rocks. The boat shattered. Both people on board were killed instantly. Now let me tell you about the Idri, Howard Ulrich and his 7-year-old son, Sonny. Ulrich felt the earthquake. He woke his son and told him to stay below deck. Then he went outside to see what was happening. He saw the wave coming from the north. A wall of water, massive, black, moving fast. Ulrich had maybe 10 seconds to react. He ran back to the cabin. He tied his son to a bunk with a piece of rope. He started the engine and pointed the bow of the Idri directly at the wave. It was the only thing he could think to do. Do not let the wave hit the side of the boat. Point the bow into it, ride over it. The wave hit the Idri at over 100 miles per hour. Ulrich later said it felt like his boat was launched into the air. They went up and up and up. He looked up at the wave and saw the tops of trees, 100-foot tall spruce trees. He was looking down at their roots. That meant the wave was so high that the trees were completely submerged. The Idri rode over the crest of the wave. Then the boat dropped down the backside. Ulrich lost control. The boat spun. He thought they were going to capsize, but the Idri stayed upright, somehow. When the water finally calmed, Ulrich looked around. The entire landscape had changed. The trees were gone. The shore was bare rock. The other 2 boats were gone. The men on them were gone. Ulrich and his son were the only survivors of Lituya Bay. The wave continued out of the bay. By the time it reached the open Gulf of Alaska, it had spread out and weakened. A passing ship reported a wave about 2 feet high. They didn't even notice it. But inside the bay, the destruction was total. An estimated 4 million trees were stripped from the mountainsides. The wave scoured the land up to 1,720 feet above sea level. That is the highest wave ever documented in human history. The damage was so extreme that it remains visible from space today. Astronauts on the International Space Station can look down at Lituya Bay and see the line where the trees stop. a bathtub ring of bare rock circling the bay. It took scientists years to understand what happened. At first, they didn't believe the numbers. 1,720 feet? Impossible. No wave can be that high. But the evidence was there. Trees ripped out of the ground at that altitude, rock scarred by water, and eyewitness testimony from Howard Ulrich. In 1960, 2 years after the wave, a geologist named Don Miller flew over Lituya Bay. He saw the damage from the air. He interviewed Ulrich. He measured the height of the wave using the tree line. His conclusion? The wave was real. It happened, and it shouldn't have. Why shouldn't it have happened? Because physicists say that water cannot hold a wave that high in a confined space. The energy required is too massive. The water would collapse under its own weight. But the water at Lituya Bay didn't collapse. It rose 1,720 feet. The leading theory today is that the shape of the bay created a perfect storm. The narrow entrance, the steep walls, the massive landslide at the perfect angle, all of it combined to create something that should be impossible. Scientists call Lituya Bay a Megatsunami to distinguish it from ordinary tsunamis. Ordinary tsunamis are caused by earthquakes. Megatsunamis are caused by landslides, and megatsunamis can be thousands of times larger. Since 1958, scientists have identified only a handful of similar events around the world. In 1963, a landslide in Italy generated a wave that killed 2,000 people. In 1980, a wave in Alaska. In 2015, a wave in Greenland. But none of them came close to Lituya Bay. None of them reached even half the height. Lituya Bay remains the largest wave ever documented. And it happened in America, in Alaska, in a bay so remote that almost no one lives there. That is why you have never heard of it. Howard Ulrich and his son made it back to town the next day. They told their story. At first, no one believed them. A wave 1,700 feet high? That is not possible. But the evidence was there. The trees were gone. The rock was bare. The boats were missing. Ulrich never fished in Lituya Bay again. He never went back. He sold the Edry and moved on. But he never forgot that night. He never forgot watching the tops of 100-foot trees pass below his boat. Geologists now know that Lituya Bay is still dangerous. The hillsides above the bay are still unstable. Another landslide could happen at any time. And if it does, another megatsunami could be generated. The scientists who monitor the bay have calculated that a wave 100 feet high could reach the town of Elfin Cove, about 30 miles away. That town has a population of about 30 people. They would have minutes to escape, but the bay is remote, accessible only by boat or plane. There is no warning system. There is no evacuation plan. There is only the knowledge that it happened before, and it could happen again. There is one more thing. In 2011, a wave similar to Lituya Bay was nearly triggered in Alaska. A massive landslide occurred on a glacier about 40 miles away. The landslide fell into a narrow fjord. It generated a wave over 400 feet high between the walls of the fjord. If that landslide had been larger, if the fjord had been wider, the wave could have been catastrophic. It was a close call, and almost no one knew about it. Lituya Bay is a place of haunting beauty. The water is deep green. The mountains rise sharp and grey. The trees grow thick on the slopes. And high above the water, a line of bare rock circles the bay like a scar. That scar is the memory of July 9th, 1958. The night 90 million tons of rock fell into the water. The night a wave 1,720 feet high surged through the bay. The night 3 boats were anchored there. 2 boats were destroyed. 6 people died. Their bodies were never found. 1 boat survived. A 24-foot fishing boat named the Edry. A father and his 7-year-old son. They lived because a man had the instinct to point his bow at the wave. Because he tied his son to a bunk. Because he started his engine in the 10 seconds between seeing the wave and being hit by it. They lived because of luck. Pure, unexplainable luck. Howard Ulrich died in 2021 at the age of 109. He was the last living survivor of the Lituya Bay Megatsunami. He never went back to the bay, but he never stopped talking about it. He wanted people to know what happened. He wanted people to remember. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you. This is a story that almost no one is telling. A 1,720-foot wave in American waters, and almost no one knows about it. Here is what I want you to do next. First, hit the like button. Not for me, for the 6 people who died that night and were never found. For Howard Ulrich, who spent his life telling this story. The algorithm needs to know that this history matters. Second, subscribe to the channel. I am the Accidental Historian. Every week, a forgotten disaster. A true story you never knew. Next week is the Great Alaska Earthquake of 1964, the largest earthquake in American history. Do not miss it. Third, leave a comment below. Here is my question. Before watching this video, had you ever heard of the Lituya Bay Megatsunami? Answer yes or no. And if you want to go further, tell me which forgotten disaster I should reconstruct next. I read every single comment. The sea does not forget, neither should we. See you in the next one.